Like many enthusiasts out there, I remember the days when changing your radio was as simple as about four bolts and sliding out the old single DIN unit. Well, that certainly has changed as vehicles have evolved, but the selection available for these vehicles has become incredibly impressive. Brands like Alpine, who we're discussing today, have come up with innovative solutions to not only enhance your in vehicle experience, but also accommodate key safety features like Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. Today, we've got their product expert, Eric Brooks, joining us, and we're going to break down a couple of the key technologies and features that Alpine has to offer. This is CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM, all about Alpine, and it starts now. What's going on, guys? Welcome to another CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu, and you are locked into CMA Networks, where we talk mobile electronics day in and day out. On the menu today is Source Units, and especially the brand that means a lot to so many. Man, who doesn't love those buttons from back in the day? But we're talking about Alpine with some really cool new tech. We've got two guests joining us, both Eric Brooks from Alpine Electronics, as well as Gord Brown from Gentech, their Canadian distributor. I'm going to go to you first. Eric, what are we going to be talking about on today's Connected?
Hey, Ben. Yeah, so we want to talk about a few things today with our ILX-W670 and ILX-W770. We want to talk about the sound tuning capability, the ability it has to get great clean signal out to amplifiers. We also want to talk about some really cool features like power stack and lighting link. So there are a lot of things to talk about.
All right, Eric, really excited to get into some cool Alpine tech with you. But first, a quick reminder from our partner, SiriusXM, on telling you guys why it's always a great add on sale. And when we get back, we've got Alpine on the menu. Don't you dare go away.
Hey, Paul here with SiriusXM, and I'd like to talk to you about attachment selling and why the SiriusXM product is one of the best things to add, especially since we don't trade dollars with any other category. I could go through all of this, but let's hear what some of our dealers have to say.
It's an easy add-on that takes, 10, 15 minutes if we're running an antenna, 1 minute if we've got an adapter to plug it into the factory SiriusXM antenna, and it's extra money. So, no brainer.
I present it to every customer because a lot of customers don't know what all they can do with Sirius. They don't know what all content they could have. It just makes too much sense not to sell it.
It creates a different customer loyalty and customer security when you explain to them why it's a better experience. Just gets them back in the door, and then the next car, they're already asking for it again. So it just keeps selling itself. It makes more sense.
Well, there you have it. You heard from our dealers. Just remember some of the best practices. Make sure you have one on display so you can demo it. Make sure you're taking advantage of our rewards program, because if you're not taking advantage of that, you're leaving even more money on the table. Make sure you got our POP up on display. And other than that, just make sure you're recommending it.
All right, welcome back to the show. I want to officially welcome our guest today, Eric Brooks up top, who's a director of training, as well as Gord Brown, representing Gentech in Canada. Guys, we're talking Alpine today, obviously, and where I wanted to start our conversation was getting the point across of something that I've noticed, Eric, that you've been messaging on CMA for years now, and that is, we can spend all day talking about features like Apple CarPlay and other stuff like that. Those are what I call creature comforts. But at its core, Alpine has always prioritized one thing, and you've said it so many times. I want you to kind of speak to this, and that is sound quality first.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, here's my philosophy. If you're going to replace the sound system in your vehicle, it should sound better than what was in there, right? And Alpine's kind of the philosophy through all of the years is getting clean, crisp, clear sound out to your speakers, right? We want to hear the music, not the devices making the music. So that's really the philosophy. And we do everything we can in all of our products to make sure that we're not putting our own impression on the sound. We're letting the music speak for itself.
And Gord, this is a true expectation. As much as we want to talk about those type of features and the size of the screens and all this type of stuff, the expectation from a customer level is that if I'm going to spend this money, I need to hear it sound better.
Absolutely. At the end of the day, we used to change radios just to get new features. I mean, you want to go back to, whether it was plugging in an iPod or getting a CD even back in the day. That was the whole point of adding a radio. Today's no different. You're probably going to have that entry point because of wireless CarPlay or Android Auto or something along those lines. But it's still about the step to get to better sound. And that's what Alpine's always represented.
All right, very good. So today, again, because we don't have unlimited time, because we could be here for hours, we're going to focus on two units that are really popular and for good reason. And we're going to break down why that is. And I think this is important because it's nice and it's fun. Trust me, I love talking the highest end stuff as much as I can. But you and I both know, and everybody who's listening knows, we got to talk about the bread and butter stuff. This is stuff that keeps our businesses going. And what Alpine has done is they've created two models, right, Eric, in the ILX-W670 and the ILX-W770 to kind of meet those needs, have features, and have a good balance of performance and price. So, why don't you talk to us just overall about these two units and how important they are to the Alpine catalog?
Yeah, well, Ben, they're very important. Number one, they allow us to get into a consumer's dashboard at a competitive price point, but again, without sacrificing sound. I mean, if it's not going to give you better sound, Alpine's not going to make it. So that's really the key. But we understand that there has to be certain functionality within these units to make them viable in the environment, right? So with the ILX-W670, you have CarPlay and Android Auto that you can do wirelessly or wired, excuse me. And then the ILX W770 is wireless. So, that gives it that next level of connectivity without having to plug in your mobile device. But, it also offers other functionality like Sirius XM ready, so it has that capability. And there are other things that you can add to the system once you get these units.
Now, Gord, of course, when you're talking to your dealers, they always want to partner with brands that check off all the boxes. I believe that these two models certainly get customers through the door. Like Eric was saying, has features like Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. But from a dealer perspective, why would they consider looking at Alpine with these two units in specific?
Well, of course, that's always a great question. Alpine represents, kind of the pinnacle of what the car audio world has, and it's that entry point to allow you to start today at something that answers your immediate need. That CarPlay Android Auto solution is usually the step into the technology today. But again, it's about where do you want it to go. So things like having the tuning features of the equalizer, the crossover modes, having that 4-volt pre-out, it gives you system expansion capability and the confidence to know that whatever you're going to do later on, you're not having to start back at zero to build from your system. And that's really the key is system building.
And honestly, I wouldn't expect Alpine to come in with anything less than a foundation that's built to grow onto, right? So we're going to get into that right now. Eric, I'm going to pass the mic over to you. Gord mentioned it right there. Let's break this down into 4 key points. The first point being the output to build a better sound system through amplification, and that starts at the signal coming out of the receiver. So, Eric, I'm going to pass it to you. Let's talk about that 4-volt preamp and why Alpine does it just a little bit different.
Yeah, so what's great about the ILX-W670 and the ILX-W770 is the fact that you get 4-volt preamp outputs, which means that you have great signal coming out of the head unit going into the amplifier. So you don't have to, have that tremendous gain out on your amp, right? It allows you to easily match the input versus the output. And what's great about these units is the fact that when you actually take and physically measure using an oscilloscope, you measure these units, they do create over 4.0 volts of output without clipping, right? So you can actually see on your oscilloscope when you hit the point of clipping signal, which is distortion, which hurts stuff and it doesn't sound good. Right. So these units can actually reach over 4 volts of output without clipping, which is a great feature to have in, I guess what's considered an entry level price point.
Now, Eric, I'm no history buff, and I've been in the game just as long as you guys have, but I remember, and this is my personal opinion, like Alpine has been promoting this high voltage output from as long as I can remember. And I think it's finally drilled home. Like if you're going to build, and let's be honest, source units don't cost what they used to cost. It's a bigger investment. So absolutely, as a customer, I want to make sure that I have that availability, the flexibility to grow that system, even though at that moment in time, I might only have enough money to buy that source unit. Having said that, my comment on the 4-volt out without clipping, incredibly important, because regardless of where you want to go, whether you're just doing a 4-channel, maybe you want to go even bigger, right? Maybe a DSP, maybe you want to do multiple subs. It all starts at the source. Cannot get good sound without that source. So thank you for expanding on that, Eric. The next item that we definitely want to talk about is the tuning options. I find this very interesting because Alpine actually really comes loaded with tuning options and features that a lot of other radios don't have. So, Eric, again, I'm going to pass this to you. Break this down for us, a couple of the tuning options that we have built into these radios.
Yeah, so Alpine understands that every car is different and every person's ears are different, right? So you're going to hear sound differently than I'm going to hear, and you want to customize the sound in your car to sound great for you. So Alpine gives you in the ILX-W670 and the ILX-W770 a 13-band graphic EQ. So you can really go in and tune the car the way you want it to. You can also protect your speakers and maximize the output of them by using onboard digital crossovers. So you can select the frequency that you want to tune to and the slope that you want to adjust. And basically all this does is make the right sound go to your speaker, right? So you're not trying to push deep bass out of a little tweeter or a smaller mid-range. You can really focus in the sound to go to the proper spot. And again, that adds longevity to your product. It gives you better sound because you're not distorting and all those things. So a lot of really cool things about these units and the sound tuning functionality of them that's really easy to use and easy to make your car sound great.
Gord, I'm going to direct my comment to you here. As I'm listening to Eric talk about the graphic equalizers and the crossovers, I can't help but remember my Alpine slide out unit with the half din EQ that I always had to have under because I needed that control of the audio. And to think that today it's all in on the same interface. Isn't that neat?
Yeah, absolutely. And that was kind of the cool thing to do at the time. That was how you eliminated your dash at night. But if you still have that radio, Ben, I have a solution for you today, so we can do an upgrade.
Very, very cool. But I don't know, it's something about those tactile graphic equalizers that just brings it all back. And of course,
Absolutely.
I'm just going to share a story because I think this is fun. Took me a weekend to dial it in. And then the first time my then girlfriend, now wife, sits in, she decides to play with it. And I'm like, and of course, we didn't have phones to take pictures of the settings. So you're just going back to how analog everything was is quite funny. All right, we're going to keep on going down this path, guys. We're talking about, we talked about the 4-volt pre-out. We talked about the built-in tuning options. This next one for me is a game changer because it's unique to Alpine. If you guys have heard of this term used by Alpine, it's called power stacking. And Eric, I want you to kind of bring it back because I know you know a lot about it, but maybe our folks that are tuning in might not be aware that this is a very unique amplification method that Alpine has come up with.
Yeah, Ben. So power stacking is really, really cool. And Alpine actually was the leader in creating these micro amplifiers back in the day with the KTP 445A and 445U, right? So we sold just tons of these amplifiers. Well, through the years, they've gone through an evolution. And a few years ago, we introduced a model called the KTA 450. So it's a power stack or a power pack amplifier. It's a very small amplifier that gives us 50 watts of output, but it has a technology called DPP. So basically what this amplifier can do out of this small chassis is give us double the power of output in burst, right? So you can measure this thing on an oscilloscope and it will give you up to 100 watts of output without clipping. Okay, it is amazing and it sounds great doing it. That's at rated distortion. So the thing sounds awesome. But what's really unique about this is when you tie this little amplifier in with our ILX-W670 or the ILX-W770, right? So if you have one of those two units, this is the 670 here. If you have this unit, you can notice that it's a very shallow chassis design. So if you're just putting this in a car, it's awesome because you have all this extra room to play with to get all your harnessing and all that stuff in, right? But what's cool is you can take your amplifier. There's a bracket that comes in the box, and you can then mount that amplifier right to the back of the radio. You take a couple of screws out, you mount this thing on, put the screws back in, and it's locked in. Okay, and it's still shallower than a regular double din chassis, right? Still shallower, so you still have the extra room there. So what it allows you to do, if you use the 450, the KTA 450, and you have one of the larger gauge power wires on your stock factory harness, you can actually use that. It's rated to be able to use that power wire for this amplifier. So you don't have to do a new power run for the KTA 450. You can tie right into the factory power wire and power this amplifier right off the same power that you're getting the head unit for. So really easy way to add great amplification to the vehicle with the 4-channel. Now, what's also really cool is that we make a mono version of this. So you can actually take the internal amplification of this, right? Use your crossovers, get it all dialed in, maximizing the power built into this. So we're not wasting the low frequency out, power on low frequencies. So you can maximize the internal power here, add the mono amplifier to it to run a subwoofer, right? So now you have your 4-channel amp built into the head unit. You have a mono amp on the back here that can run a number of the subwoofers that we create and do it really well, because it also has that DPP technology. So the mono is a 200 watt mono amplifier that can give you up to 400 watts of output. So a lot of cool solutions that we have, and a very unique value proposition that we have for the ILX-W670 and the ILX-W770. And we're the only ones in the industry that have something like it.
Eric, those are great points. And keep in mind that all of that technology that's available, whether you're using the 4-channel, the KTA 450, or the mono KTA 200, they are both using the features that are built into the head unit to give you that additional burst. So especially if you're using, say, the subwoofer amplifier, you get subwoofer control from the head unit to be able to control that subwoofer.
Great
so
point.
all integrated and part of how that whole system building technology works, and how we've put that stuff together with Alpine.
You know what? This for me is, it just bugs me and irks me every time I hear a dealer say, or they come with a challenge with a customer that says, "Oh, I don't have enough space for a sound system." Well, did you hear about the power stacks technology? Because you don't need much space for that, right? I'm just saying, like, guys, you need to know about this because it is a solution type scenario. Why turn away a customer if they're giving you an objection, being that of space, right? I think this is a perfect example of how the solutions exist, but you need to be aware, guys, that this exists, and you can put that in for your customer. Okay. The last part is going to be a little bit more technical because, of course, we have a lot of installers that tune in. Getting radios into cars these days in itself is a challenge. All right. We all know that. However, these two models in particular, the 670 and the 770, kind of offer some design features that help the installer get that in. Eric, I want you to speak to that from a installer perspective, just how easy and what kind of features are there for them to facilitate the installation.
Well, Ben, I'll tell you, as far as installation goes, I don't get to work on as many cars as I used to, but when I do work on them, the modules and the interfaces that you have to use today versus back when I was doing installs every day is just, it's unbelievable, right? And you have all kinds of connections, you have all these modules, all these separate components that you have to put in. Maybe it's a Sirius XM module, maybe it's a Maestro module or some other, pack or whatever it is, module, that all have to fit into the dash. And when you have a full size chassis, it really gets tight back there, right? And it's hard to get everything in. You basically need a shoehorn to get all of those electronic devices into the dash. Where with this unit, you have tons of room. Even when you have the amplifier on the back of it, it's still shallower than that standard double-din chassis. So it gives us a lot more room, a lot easier of an install situation. Now, I'll tell you a story. I have a friend of mine. He has a Lexus. It's an older Lexus, an LS430, I think it is. And something that I thought was neat was he had a double-din head unit in his car, and he's actually swapped it out. He wanted wireless CarPlay and Android Auto. So he took the ILX-W770 and put it in there. And something that he told me about when he did the install previously, when he put the other radio in, there's an actual a compass module that clips underneath the AC control in his car, right? Well, when he put in the original radio that he installed, it was a full-size chassis. He had to actually take that out and move it into the dash. And his compass never really worked perfectly, right? Because he had to relocate it. Well, when he put the ILX-W770 in, he told me he was able to clip his compass module back in and then put the chassis of the head unit in, and it all fit fine. So I thought that was a pretty cool story. The fact that the electronics that were getting in the way with changing out the factory head unit originally wasn't a problem when it came to installing these shallow chassis units. So I thought that was a pretty cool thing. And just the fact that, how much he had to stuff in the dash, it was a lot easier to get it in using the ILX-W770 versus a deeper chassis design.
All right, guys. So thank you so much for coming in today. I mean, obviously, even for, I'm not going to say the entry level Alpine, but certainly let's call it the mid-range Alpine units here in the 670 and the 770, we can see that it's loaded with features. Alpine has thought about everything from the sound quality to the control of the sound to the expandability to the installation. We covered all those points. Eric, you've seen these units in the wild, in people's cars. What is the overall feedback, and why do you think dealers should definitely pay attention to these two particular units?
Well, the feedback from the consumer is they sound great, they're easy to use, and they upgrade the technology. They get the benefits of technology that they wanted. So that really those are the key things that the user sees is better sound, easy to use, works great.
I mean, I'm going to have to add to that. It's also got that Alpine feel, which is hard to put into words. I mean, it is what it is, right? The whole feel of an Alpine unit is what it is. And Gord, with you, last message for dealers out there that are like, you know what, maybe I didn't know about these units, or what message do you have for them?
At the end of the day, it's all about the reliability, and the fact that it's an Alpine unit gives you the confidence to know. The warranty is a comforting factor as well, with over the counter exchange that we do in Canada that nobody else does. These are all built to maintain that reliability factor and give you the comfort to know that when you're selling this to your customer, it's the right piece for them.
All right, guys, thank you so much for being on today's Connected.
Thanks for having us, Ben.
I want to take this opportunity and thank my two guests today, both Eric Brooks from Alpine as well as Gord Brown from Gentech. And if you're interested in finding out more about the specifications of these units or any of the items discussed on today's show, make sure you hit up their website. We'll put it on the screen, alpine-usa.com. And should you be a dealer located in Canada, definitely hit up the team at Gentech International, as they are the official distributor for Alpine in Canada. Now, my takeaway from this is I don't need to sit here and tell you what Alpine is, what they represent, and what they do. My job is to make sure you understand that these guys are hard at work providing solutions for dealers such as yourselves to be able to answer the queries of customers calling you, texting you, or coming into your store. If space is a concern, that shallow chassis is a game changer. You want expandability? Check out the Power Stack system. Worried about install? I think Eric made a great example with his friend there in his Lexus. At the end of the day, it's all about awareness. And for you watching this show, hopefully you gained a little bit of knowledge, and this will help you in your future sales. That's it for this CMA Connected, brought to you by SiriusXM. I'm your host, Ben Wu. Until next time, we connect.